Hi there. Welcome to this next video for my new channel, Mind, Body, Soul Evolution TV. This is, you can call me Gemma in Spanish, or Gemma, or Gem, or Gems for a nickname. And for this next video, I had been actually coming up with all these ideas and concepts of what I wanted to do. I had started fleshing out the concepts and everything, and instead, Source stepped in and I was asked to share something that would be of higher service at this point in time before I move on to anything else. And that is to share the stories of the 3 angelic visitations that I've experienced this lifetime. And I say this lifetime because I'm aware that I've actually been contacted and worked with angels, angelic energies, luminous beings for multiple lifetimes. Um, but anyhow, for this lifetime, there are 3 visitations that I am being asked to share with you, and in the most authentic, heart-centered way I possibly can, and hopefully do these recountings justice. Because to be perfectly honest with you, that's part of the big holdup for me. That's part of the big stumbling block that I've been coming up against. Is one is the fear that I won't do its due justice in telling the stories, and or I'll omit certain important details, or I'll forget something, or I don't know. Uh, it's like I've built this pressure. I put all this pressure on myself to yeah, you know how that goes. And the other aspect is that for me, in my experience, I know that, like, for example, um, there are people that I've come across on YouTube and books and, whatnot, podcasts, that have talked about having had angelic visitations as well. And I've contacted, and, I've connected with some of these people too throughout my experience this lifetime. But still, in my experience, in this particular walk, this lifetime for me, talking about it has meant a whole host of challenges, um, including, and I share this because some of you may be experiencing something similar on your path. So I'm also being shown to be transparent and talk about it all. But I've been ostracized by my family and close friends, who now think I'm crazy after sharing, that I've been visited by angels. um, I've um, I've lost jobs over it. I've I've experienced all kinds of attacks after sharing about my experiences with angelic visitations. I've I've actually been psychically attacked, verbally, emotionally, and physically. Yes, including physically. And I'll share this too because I'm also being shown that it might be helpful to somebody out there possibly experiencing something similar. But with my abusive ex-husband whom I had to file a protective order against through the court systems in Pennsylvania. Um, in his cyclical abuse, which, I'm not, I understand that how I played into it, and how many of us who are born into like these heavily dysfunctional situations and families, and other things like this, and big challenges in life. um, it's all for a purpose, of course, but we then, tend to proliferate, or perpetuate these patterns that we learned, that we were taught while we were growing up, that it is part of life. It was presented to us as being the norm. So we kind of generated a blueprint of what reality looks like based on the dysfunction that was being modeled for us. So of course it makes sense that for a long time we just kept playing out these patterns. And yes, um, uh, at some point, uh, you got to take ownership and realize, that I played into it and kept it going. I mean, now that's like, I seem like it's like I was a whole entire different person back then. It's hard for me to connect with how I even put up with that, but at the time I was self-trapped by these false paradigms that I had been inculcated with, that I had been taught. So, um, and yes, my abusive ex-husband would frequently, like, 'cause earlier in the relationship, I had opened up to him and shared with him that at that time, I had only experienced two angelic visitations, but I shared it with him. And yes, he proceeded to, you know, during his outbursts and things, he would use it as a weapon and mock me, cut me down, put me down for it, say that I was delusional, I was crazy, whatever. And even went so far as to, because like the last 2.5 years or so of our relationship, it started to really palpably feel like I started to sense this calling more and more, like this little voice inside me started to grow louder and louder, that if I didn't do something, I was going to miss out on some big calling, some big, uh, you know, this big calling that I was that was lurking in the not so far distance, but I could kind of feel it. I could start to feel it, and I was starting to wake up already to it. And um, yeah, make a long story short, I was telling him how I felt that being in a dysfunctional relationship, in an abusive, cyclical relationship, um, I felt that if it didn't stop, it was going to not allow me to step into what I was beginning to perceive as a mission, a calling in this lifetime. And I communicated that to him, that I felt that, it was like it was beginning to become a deal breaker. Like I could sense that I would never be able to step into my mission if I were to stay in this relationship, because there was nobody that was going to uh, decide for him to heal other than himself. I couldn't force him to choose a path of healing, right? So, um, but it took me a long time to learn that too. That you can't force anyone to choose to heal. So all you can do is choose it for yourself and model it and show it, and hopefully they'll catch on and do so themselves. But if not, you can't it's a whole, I have a whole different mindset now, and I understand things on a whole different level, and very, very much so. But uh, anyway, he even went so far as to say at times that he said during fits of anger, he said, "What if I'm a demon here to stop you from completing your mission?" Like he used it. He on some level, on like on an unaware, unconscious level, he was just kind of saying what he thought would push my buttons, and using it as a weapon, that the knowledge that he had, that I had opened up to him about my angelic visitations. But he actually, in a sense, he was identifying himself. He was over and over repeatedly identifying himself to me. So anyway, I just wanted to make it a point to share that as well. I was asked to share that because if any of you are in a similar situation, or still caught in patterns of dysfunction or violence or abuse, cyclical abuse, with abusive partners and whatnot, yeah, it's time to change that now, because you won't ever step into your mission until you choose to break free from those prisons that you yourself have begun to build and create around yourself, and perpetuate and uphold. So yeah, you got to break free from that yourself. So, and if your man or woman ever tells you something like that they're a that oh, what if, even if they think they're just saying it in anger to piss you off, if they say, if your man or woman says to you, "Hey, what if I'm a demon trying to stop you from completing your life mission?" Believe them. They're self-identifying. They're self-identifying with the different entities that have taken over, and have attached all the different attachments, and then they're self-identifying at that point. So believe them. Okay. So anyway, life lessons. Moving on. Okay. So now, um, I'm going to do 3 videos telling the 3 angelic visitations, and I'm going to do it, I don't have a set way or whatever established method for doing this. I'm just going to try to do it the best I can. And before I dive into this first one, and I'll, again, I'll tell it in chronological order as they occurred. Um, Before I tell the first one, let me just take a couple deep breaths, and we'll dive right in. Okay? So, bear with me here. Okay, so for the first one, it was October 6th, 2007. I had been invited to a friend's party, and this was not a normal party. This friend of mine was he had been a member of a sort of a kind of a cult band from the 70s that's kind of well known. Um, I hesitate to divulge who it is. Um, so I'll just keep it out of the story for now. But anyway, this friend of mine, happens to own an art gallery in downtown Los Angeles, and he frequently would, I don't know if he still owns it or not, but anyway, he would frequently just, like close down the art gallery and like just invite all his, friends, buddies, jam out musicians, whatever, and partay, just have a big old blast, like 'cause it was a big area. I think it had 3 stories, the building, and it was mainly in the downstairs area that there was like a stage, there was a bar area, there was a dance floor. It was like a pretty large area, and it was packed with people always. Everybody was having fun. It was a blast. Anyhow, so for this October 6th in 2007, I had been invited to a party there by my friend, and I somehow I don't even, I don't even know how, but I somehow had mixed up because it was October, but it was October 6th, 2007, and I mixed up the invitations, and for some reason thought that was the masquerade one, because like for the whole month of October it was Halloween, whatever, like party, that's how I understood it, and so I thought it was a masquerade, like a costume party. So when I showed up, I was dressed like a butterfly. And this actually ends up having, oh my God, like a whole lot of meaning for me in my life mission, and in a whole lot of ways. And it's part of my mind body soul evolution logo, the butterfly, for, I mean, not just for its transformational qualities and transmutational qualities, but many, many, many reasons. Anyway, that's for another video, other videos. But okay, so I was dressed like a butterfly with wings and everything, and I even have some photos still of this, um, and I've posted them on Facebook again under the hashtag Chronicles by Confessions. That you can look them up if you want to look these confessions up, but it's under one of them. But yeah, photos of me dressed like a butterfly. So I showed up to this party dressed like a butterfly. No one else is in costume, but there's a lot of people and everybody's partying and all this other stuff. And bottom line, I had been going through my second divorce, and I had invited this guy to come to this party, show up to this party, and meet me there. And he he uh, he never showed up, so I felt like ditched. And I had been going through this divorce, and it was the second divorce. Um, I was feeling really, really low. Okay, and then to top it all off, I had tried to dance a little bit to try to like feel better and whatnot. And the year before, so this was 2007, 2006, yeah, I had major surgery on my right knee. I had an ACL reconstruction. I was a theater major and a double, a dance and vocal minor. And I, during one of the, like a dance performance with a team, during a jump on the landing, I had um, bent my knee the wrong way, my leg the wrong way, and my ACL totally snapped. And if you know anything about this kind of injury, for many athletes, many like sports, like football, basketball athletes, whatever, in many cases, it is a career-ending injury. I don't know how it is nowadays, but for many, many years, it's been a career-ending injury. And not only that, but people who undergo this kind of surgery or an ACL reconstruction end up having like a huge, fat, deep purple scar that's like about like this long on their leg, and all this other stuff. Um, I had just had that ACL reconstruction the year before, and it's a long recovery process. I actually spent like over a month in a machine, with my leg in a machine in bed for 9 hours, going like bending my knee, like my leg, and stretching it. The machine would do this for 9 hours a day in a bed. I did this for over a month. Then I graduated to a wheelchair, which I spent a few months in. And then after that, it was crutches. And, anyway, long story short, I was told that I would, more than likely, I would have to walk by the end of it all with a cane for the rest of my life, and that I would probably not be able to do any crazy like running or jumping. This is what I was told, which is, by the way, gratefully not the case. Okay, so so yeah, I should say that real quick. But anyway, but at the time that night, I had tried to dance a little bit. So yeah, so I was going through my second divorce. I was in the dumps about that. A second failed marriage, and like it was awful. And at the time, we were both immature. He had been unfaithful to me. I had been unfaithful to him. It was awful. Just immature. It was things that I've luckily grown out of. But anyway, at the time I had not. So yeah, this is what it's the truth. It's what it was. So that night, yeah, there was all of that going on for me. And then I had tried to dance, and my knee swole up and started hurting. And that was kind of like just about the last straw, right? And I was like, I was feeling like rock bottom. So I went like kind of limping to the bar. I sat down. I wasn't going for a drink. I just wanted to sit down and rest my knee, and it was getting a little bit swollen, and it was starting to hurt. And I started to cry, and I was like, oh man, I'm like, you know what? I can't do this scene right now. And my friend, who was like, he hopped behind the bar. He often did this. And he's a cool guy, but he hopped behind the bar and would like bartend during his own parties frequently. But he was back there, and he was like trying to cheer me up and convince me to stick around longer. And anyway, I at some point was like, nah, I just gotta go. And I was just bummed out. And right around then, I saw something really odd. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna keep being 100% transparent and keep sharing here. But I started to notice this guy making his way toward me. And look, I've been hit on plenty of times at a like club slash bar scene, whatever. But and even though I wasn't fully like I wasn't nearly as awakened as I am now to the fact that I'm an empath and I have strong empathic abilities, I still intuitively could feel and sense that like this guy's energy was just weird. Like I couldn't describe it. It was odd. So anyhow, I started to just decide, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. And I started to make my way across the dance floor, and this guy started following me. And I look back, and I look at him, and he's like about like about 5-6 feet away from me at this point. And I notice, kind of like in this like in this is gonna sound crazy, like this is what I saw, okay? um like in the movie, in the film Men in Black, when that one alien's eyes like shut this way, vertically, rather than horizontal, or like when our eyelids close. But it wasn't even the eyelids; it was his pupils. His pupils like went like this, shut and open this way. And he was. I know what I saw, okay, and he saw, like, there was a spark of like recognition that he realized that I caught it, I looked back right at the kind of like the perfect moment, that I looked back to see that if he was still following me, and it was right at the perfect moment when I looked at him, and his eyes did that, and he saw that I saw. Okay. And so he started coming after me, and then I started running. I started like going faster, and my knee was hurting, and I started to cry. I started to run upstairs toward the parking lot to go out to my car, and I kept looking back to see. And for a while, that I saw that he was coming after me, and when I got to the parking lot, I ran to the car. I opened it real quick. I jumped in and I shut the car door. I was like breathing all heavy out, and I started to cry. I started to like bawl, and I'm sitting here like with the butterfly wings, like trying to get in the seat, like to try to just, I didn't have time to take them off before I jumped in the seat, and I mean, this sounds like a fucking movie or some shit. but anyway, so I'm sitting there in the car, and I'm like, I got to get the fuck out of here, and I pull out of the parking spot and I start to drive. Now, this art gallery that belongs to my friend was fenced in. The parking lot there was a little parking lot with it, and it was completely fenced in. And there was an entrance, there was an opening that was just wide enough for one car to go in and out at a time, not enough for two. So, um, as I approached the exit, I pulled up, and I paused right there for a moment, as it dawned on me that, like, I didn't even know how the fuck to get home. Here I started to really bawl. I started to like really lose it at this point. I'm sitting here in my car, and like, I mean, I had gone through this divorce, and it was kind of like ugly. We cheated on each other. It was not pretty. And and this guy that I had invited to try to make myself feel better, because that's what I thought would make myself feel better at that time, erroneously, of course. But he had ditched me and not shown up. And I felt like an idiot, dressed like a butterfly when no one else was in costume at this fucking party, right? And then this thing happened with this guy with the weird eyes, and I was like, did I see that correctly? I mean, it was all it was like I was feeling overwhelmed, and I like started bawl. I felt like I hit rock bottom, because it occurred to me too that I didn't know where to go. I didn't have a GPS, and I remember that my friend had vaguely given me instructions on how to get to his art gallery, and it had taken me forever to fucking find it that day, like before the party. And I don't even, it was like a miracle that I found it. So I was like so turned around, I couldn't even remember how the fuck to get back home. And I lost it. I just at the entrance of this parking lot, I just sat there bawling, crying. And it was at that moment that there was like a knock on my glass, on the driver's side window, right as I was bawling, like tears streaming down my face like crazy. And there's this, then I look, and it startled me, and I looked, and there was this older gentleman, much older, like older. At the time, I was in my 30s, early 30s, right? Or mid 30s. I was in my mid 30s, and he was. I found out this person, this human vessel, was 60, at the time was 64 years old. He's older now, but so apparently some angels are able to temporarily, at least, utilize a human vessel. And apparently not all angels can do this. Like, for example, Metatron. my boy Metatron, he is his structure is a crystalline form that is of such high frequency, because he is the holder of all light codes, light languages, and he was restructured and reformed by God, Goddess, uh, as such, to serve in such a way, to be heaven's scribe, so to speak, and be the keeper of all the light languages. So in his specific crystalline form, he would, like, from my understanding, what I was shown, he would like make a human body explode if he tried to. But anyway, but some angels apparently can, and in this case, it was Michael. It was Archangel Michael, and apparently he can do that too. He can temporarily borrow a human body, and it was shown to me, it was explained to me that it's got to be a very specific type of human body. It can't just be any human body. And it doesn't necessarily only have to be a human body either. It could be an animal, believe it or not. But anyway, that can hold the frequency of Archangel Michael. But it has to be a very specific type of body of a human who has cultivated him or herself to a certain degree, a certain frequency, a certain level of vibratory frequency, vibration that can hold, even temporarily, his vibration. So anyway, in this case, it was this older gentleman who was very striking looking, very interesting looking, as he had these dreadlocks that came down all the way to like his ankles. But I didn't realize that at first. Okay, but anyway, going back to when he knocked on the window, and I was bawling there, and I cracked my window down a little bit, and this older gentleman was standing there, and he said, he started to speak, except the first words, I don't know what to call them, were not any kind of human language I've ever heard before. Okay, and at that moment, I was like, what? And he repeated it in the same thing. It was hard for me to place any sort of human background to the language he was speaking, because and I know quite a bit about languages. I speak four of them, but I've learned about other languages too, and I'd like to learn more, and a little bit here and there. So for me to have a hard time placing, like, it did not seem like human. Okay. Anyway, the third time when he repeated it, it was actually English, and at that point, what he said was, and he had this like look on his face, and he said, "Do you know who you are?" And I'm sitting there. I'm in my car. I'm in the. I mean, I just went through everything that I just went through, that I just explained, and I had just been bawling, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Look." And then I proceeded to say something that was, in retrospect, fucking hilarious. Like, just I mean, I couldn't have chosen more perfect words, but at the time, it didn't click. But I, at the time, lived in Huntington Beach, California, and I was in downtown LA at the time, and it was late at night, and I knew that I needed to find the 101, the highway 101, to get home. And like a smartass, he says, "Do you know who you are?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm the one looking for the 101." Now, again, in retrospect, think about the wording of it. I'm the one looking for the 101. Anyway, but whatever. The point is, he repeated it. He said, "Do you know who you are?" And I was like, "Look, I don't have time for this. I'm looking for the 101. Do you know? Can you get me to the 101 or not?" And he looked at me and he said, "Can we talk for 5 minutes?" And I looked at him, and I had all these tears streaming down my face. Like, uh, I was like, "What is this guy? Get out of my face! Like, what the fuck? Like, no, no." And I was about to like let him have it. I was about to I was about to kind of unload and be like, no, fucking no. I gotta go." And right at that moment, um, this car just like whipped around out of nowhere, seemingly just whipped around the corner and came and came and drove up and got in front of my car, and like positioned itself like I told you, the opening was only wide enough for one car at a time. So they were trying to come in and I was trying to come out, and we were at an impasse. And they were shining it was late at night. They had their headlights on, and it was like shining in my face and my eyes, and I couldn't see who it was driving behind the wheel or whatever. I was just like, what the fuck? And I'm like, who the, and they were in my way. I couldn't get out. And And he says to me through the window, he says, "Now, will you talk for just 5 minutes?" and and I look at him, and I'm looking at the car in front of me. I'm like, okay, okay, you got 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes. This is what I said. So I pulled the car backwards out of the way, and then this other car, drove in and all pissed off or whatever, and got, parked. And um and I pulled into a spot. And see, here's the thing. Even though I got to know who this was, and whatnot, there was there again, if you've ever read anything about any accounts of angelic visitations, there's an energetic field to it all. Underneath it all, there are things occurring and happening that you can't put uh, exact human words to, that are undeniable when you're in its presence. So it's hard to explain how and why. I just like, I knew that I was going to talk to this being for a few minutes at least. Okay. All right. Anyway, and he walked over when I pulled into the parking spot. He walked over the car, and he was standing there, and he said, "We can talk like this, or if you'd be kind enough to let me sit in the seat so that I'm not standing the whole time." Now at this point, I'm like, but I'm looking around, and I see, there's people walking around at this point, getting out of that car, and then some other people had started walking right outside the fence. There was like other people streaming out of the party or whatever. And I was like, okay, I said, "You can come over here and sit down, because I understand you're older. Okay, you can have a seat, but only for 5 minutes." And he walked around to the other side of the car, and he opened the seat. And that's when I saw that he had to like lift his uh huge long dreads that went down to his ankles, and he had to like pick him up and wrap him around himself and sit in the car, and, when he got in. And he sat in, and he looked at me, and we started talking. Now, at this point, he told me he was coming to me as Michael, and he was coming to talk to me. Now, we ended up talking for a couple hours, okay, this night. And I honestly, I never sat down and wrote out everything that was discussed or talked about, as I did with other events and other experiences I've had of this kind, of this nature. But so I'm just gonna kind of, off the cuff, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna try to share as much as I can remember of the conversation, because there were some interesting things, intense things that came out. But basically, let's see. In no particular order, I'm just going to start naming some of the different things that we covered, that we talked about in this conversation. He said I was wearing the necklace I was wearing at the time. It wasn't this, but it was something else. He said it was Cleopatra's wheel, half of it anyway. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I do now, the 24 points of happiness, Cleopatra, the piece of jewelry that she wore. In fact, it's hanging. If you can see it back there in the wall, I actually printed it out, the design. It's I'm pointing at it at the tip of my finger. Can you see it? Yeah, that's actually the design for it, Cleopatra's wheel. But yeah, he said that I was wearing half of it. We ended up getting out of the car and walking back. He asked me to walk back into the building so we could sit down and talk, and I agreed to it. And because I had been crying, and he didn't want me to. He said I probably shouldn't drive like that anyway, and he was right, of course. So we went into the building, and we sat down on the stairs, and he proceeded to tell me. He repeated again, don't you know who you are? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? Who? What? Okay, now you need to understand, at this point in time, my mindset was that if there was a God or goddess, if there was such a thing, then I was fucking pissed at it. I'm just being honest. That was my mindset at the time, because I had experienced I've experienced a lot by that time, a lot of a lot, and so I was kind of angry in a way when he started talking to me. I don't know. You may not think that someone like that might be visited by an angel, but apparently I was. So now he proceeded to tell me that he asked me where I had been. And I said, what do you mean? Where have I been? And he actually said this, like his Archangel Michael fierceness, totally came through when, I mean, he fiercely, sternly said to me, hope, faith, charity, love, they've been looking for you. Yes, this is what Archangel Michael said to me. amongst many, many, many other things that night. But that hit home. And anyway, so he told me many, many other things. He said that that I needed to find out more about who I was, who I am. He asked me to read Genesis 49, the part about Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, which, by the way, if you know anything about my background or about me, you know, the number 11 has been so impactful in this lifetime for me in so many ways. Again, that's for many other videos, okay? But anyway, yeah, the number 11 is huge for me in many, many, many ways. And yeah, Archangel Michael told me that I was a descendant um, of Yeshua, of Jesus, the man who became the Christ, and who apparently had offspring. That I now, you know, I'm much more aware about this now, and I've awakened to a lot more, and I've remembered a lot more. But at the time, you know, in October 6th, 2007, when Archangel Michael was talking to me, you know, I did not. I was in a different place. I was not nearly. I had not gone through so many awakenings and so many things and consciousness expansions. You know, so I was flying by the seat of my pants and with this experience, and he and it's undeniable. Okay, it's not like I was just delusional or whatever. It's undeniable. Plus furthermore there was proof later on, but I'll get to that. But okay, so um he told me to read Genesis 49, the part about Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob. He said that that's who I descended through, and through the house of David and Solomon, King Solomon, the Solomonic line, lineage, and specifically Joseph, which when he was telling me this, I told him, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, even though I had been born into a strict Roman Catholic family, and I had been, as a kid, I had been made to go to Saturday catechism and Sunday school and all this other stuff. But I did not remember anything specific about the sons of Jacob and Joseph, and I didn't know the Bible nearly that well. Okay, at the time, I do now, but at the time. So he asked me to please read that section first, to start there, and I said, okay, I will. And then he said, okay, but then don't stop there. I need you to do something else. Can you please read? He asked me. He wasn't like commanding me, you know, or ordering me. He asked me to then read the entire Bible, all of it. And then he asked me that to not stop there. He asked me to read all sacred texts and scriptures and ideologies and writings on ideologies held past and present by humanity across the globe. Right? So when he asked me that, I looked at him and I was like, whoa. I was with you with the whole, you know, with the whole I'll read the Genesis 49, the paragraph about Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, and then I'll read the whole Bible. But I don't have enough time. I think I actually said those words. I said I don't have enough time this lifetime to read all of that. And I started laughing, and he just repeated it, like, more sternly. He just repeated it. You know, will you please, you know, and like he asked me to, read all sacred texts, scriptures, esoteric writings, like all writings, theological writings, ideological explanations of belief systems held by humanity, past and present. And I saw, like I could, once again, it's unexplainable. It's undeniable. The feeling, the energetic feeling, is undeniable. But you have to be there to know what I'm talking about. But okay, so he was insistent on it, and so I was trying to understand why, and I said, why would you ask? Why are you asking me to do this? Why? And Michael said, because the seeds of truth were planted for all to hear across space-time. And it is time for you to remember that. At the time, like, I understood what he was talking about, but it didn't mean a whole lot of much of anything to me, and frankly, it seemed like a whole lot of work. But this is, the surface me was reacting, responding in that manner, but inside there was most definitely a place inside that was resonating with every single thing that he was saying, and knew that this was truth, and knew that this was legit, that this was happening. Anyway, now let me read to you the part, just so you know, real quick, this part of Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob. I have it, I had put it to the side here so that I could read it to you during this video, because that was like the first thing I did when I went home that night after the experience. I drove home and found my way to the 101 and went back to Huntington Beach, and that was like the first thing I did, is look up Genesis 49, the section on Joseph, and this is what it says. And he actually said the whole section to me out loud. But I couldn't remember. I still don't know it, by heart, word for word. But he at the time said it to me word for word. And let's see. It says, Joseph is a fruitful bough. Now, bough is a bow, a fruitful bow. A bow is actually a vine, which comes into play big time in my lifetime. Not to mention the fact that, I have a strong, deep connection with the grapevine, and with vines in other past lifetimes, in one lifetime strongly with a passion fruit vine. But in this lifetime with the grapevine, and in fact, I have two last names, and one of my last names, Parra means vine or grapevine. Okay, so yeah, Joseph is a fruitful bow by a well. His branches run over the well. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his arms were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of the heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors, up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. And I'm getting goosebumps, like big time, all up and down my spine right now, as I just read this out loud to you. But So, and when he was telling it to me, because there are so many translations, biblical translations, uh, but when he was telling it to me, some of the words that he chose, I remember, were slightly different. But he said that's what he said. Joseph is a fruitful bow, and he said the bow bears a purple fruit, which could be a grapevine, and the branches run over a well. And although this particular passage in this translation doesn't say it, he said to me that the well has healing waters. And yes, the archers have bitterly grieved him and hurt him and hated him. Because if you know the story, now I know, I know it now, but at the time I had no clue. But the story of Joseph is that he goes through a lot for like the first 2/3 of his life. His family treat him like shit. His brothers beat the shit out of him and throw him into a ditch and leave him for dead. And then they realize that they might get in trouble for it, so they come back and then they still don't want to deal with him, so they sell him to some merchants passing by into slavery. They sell him as a slave, his brothers, and then he goes through all this stuff, all this turmoil in life, and then the last third of his life, God bestows all the gifts and blessings and riches and the crown upon his head, because that was his, I don't know, his destiny, whatever, to live out, whatever. But I read it out loud. I made it a point to read it out loud because Archangel Michael, that night, he said that I come from, that I descend from the tribe of Joseph, but that also I am to be like Joseph in this lifetime. So at the time when he was telling me that, I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with or acquainted with Joseph's story, so it didn't mean much. And I was like, okay, I got to look that up, but now that I know, holy duty. I mean, like, it is to a T what my experience has been this lifetime thus far. It has been an extremely challenging journey, bit with fraught with bitter battles and tons of trauma and I mean unfathomable just a lot of suffering. And oh my God, I so want to believe that the last third is, as Archangel Michael said, that like Joseph, I'm to be like Joseph and experience heaven's treasures for the latter part of my life. Hopefully, if I play my cards right, I guess. But anyway, so he did say that, and he said what else? Because I don't want to forget anything. Oh, well, I was sitting on these steps most of the time as we were talking, away from the party goers and all that stuff. And I was sitting there and talking to him and trying to understand why this was happening and why he was asking me to do the things he was asking me to do, like read all these sacred texts and scriptures. Um, and he came over and he sat down next to me, and I've seen this before. I've heard about this in paintings and stories and depictions, that he took those beautiful long dreads and he like wrapped them around me as I was crying, and it like instantaneously like melted away any like suffering I was feeling at that moment, and it felt so good. And this next part, so he got up then, and he turned around to me and he went like this. He extended his hand and he said, let's dance. And I was like, I had just been going through, like all the pain with my knee. My knee swole up and it was hurting. It was still hurting. And when he mentioned that, well, let's dance, it automatically came back to my awareness. I was like, no, I'm, you don't understand. My knee is really hurting me right now. I had this surgery. I was in the middle of talking and he just interrupted me and did it again and was like, let's dance, with this big old smile on his face. and, and I was like, okay. and I took his hand and I stood up and I we started to dance, and there was suddenly no pain in my knee. And I like immediately became aware of it, and I looked down and the swelling was gone, because it was like a fucking football. It was like it had swollen up. Like that's what would happen at the time, because it was like not that long after this huge, excuse me, surgery. And um it was like all swole up, like all fucking ugly looking and shit. And and I looked down, like the pain that it was gone, and I looked down and it looked normal, like my other knee, and I was like, "What the?" And we just kept dancing, and we danced for a while, and uh, uh, the other thing I'll say about that is that, okay, so if you're aware, again, like I said, of what an ACL reconstruction ends up looking like afterwards, after you've had one, it becomes like a long, dark purple, thick ass scar and all this other stuff, and mine had been looking kind of rough, whatever, and um, I'll just fucking show you. I'll just fucking fuck it. I'll just show you. I mean, first of all, they said I would probably have to more than likely use a cane to walk for the rest of my life. I don't need a cane. They said I wouldn't be able to do like any excessive jumping, running. I jump, run like crazy. I do everything. I do it all. Okay, but check this shit out. Hold on. So an ACL reconstruction. Google it if you don't know what they look like. Google it. But check this shit out. Can you see? Okay, I have a little bit of a bruise there. Ignore the bruise. But can you see, like, can this camera really get this? Like, do you see that? Do you see that scar? Do you see that? Like that little white line? This is what's left of an ACL reconstruction after dancing with Archangel Michael. Okay? And like seriously, uh, I know that after that, doctors were amazed at how it healed and how it looked. I mean, it looks like a little thin little white line. Okay, Google it. You'll see. The scars look awful. Anyway, so I mean, I know that surgeries have come a long way and everything, but anyway. So this was 2007, and that's just really weird. Okay, but yeah. So, and lastly, he had given me two messages to give to two people before we parted ways that night. And one of them was to this woman whom, like as I was going through the divorce, I was trying desperately to find a place to live. All of a sudden, I was a single mom with three little boys, and my husband whom I was divorcing from was like, he was like, in a lot of ways very immature and very childlike himself, and like irresponsible, and like couldn't handle what was happening, and like just gone from the pic, just gone, and not realizing that, hello, we got to figure this out, and go figure out how to sort things and go our separate ways in a way that will both as best as possible land on our feet. I mean, that's how I would try to, but he couldn't handle it and disappeared on me. So I was like, all of a sudden trying to find a place and everything. And this one landlord I had applied to, and it was downtown. It was in downtown Los Angeles, and I just was just barely made the income requirement to qualify for the apartment, which was a lower rent apartment, what I could afford as a single mom at that moment. All of a sudden, but she still turned me down. And anyway, somehow, somehow, Archangel Michael knew about that. I didn't say anything. I didn't mention that to him, and that was one of the messages he asked me to deliver. He asked me to tell the woman who was the landlord that I had just tried to rent from, that I had just tried to get a place from. He said all this to me, to tell her, to remind her, to tell her that Archangel Michael had visited me and that he had told me to remind her that she was an angel of mercy and that she was forgetting. I was like, okay, and at the time I didn't think anything of it. But then later on, the next day, I called the woman up, and it was kind of weird because she had already turned me down for the apartment, and I was like, calling her up, but he had asked me to do it, so I called her, and I tell her what he told me, word for word. I said, look, I know this is going to sound really odd, but listen, last night I experienced something really, really crazy. I was visited by Archangel Michael, and he asked me to call you specifically to tell you to remind you that you are an angel of mercy and that you are forgetting. And then I kind of waited to see how she responded, and I was like, oh my God. And she started crying on the phone, and she said, how did you know? How did you know? How did you know? Are you following me? And I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And she said that she had recently started a group in her church, a church group called the Angels of Mercy. And yeah, enough said. Okay, so, and I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that. So the other message that he asked me to give was actually to the guy who ditched me that night. And he asked me to tell him, to reach out to him and tell him that, to remember that he's not only Andrew, but he's Michael too. Because this guy's name was Andrew Michael. That was his middle name. Yeah. Anyway, so, and I was like, okay, I'll do that, so I did that as well. I delivered that message as well. And at the time, this person had been somebody that I was in acting class, advanced acting class on at a very top-notch theater, and with a top-notch instructor, with Arthur Mendoza. And I had been in an advanced scene study working with this guy. And anyway, he's a really, really talented, extremely talented actor, very brilliant actor. But anyway, when I delivered that message, when I told him what Michael had said, he also kind of flipped out, and I never heard from him again. So I never found out what the meaning of that, or why it flipped him out, but that was the reaction. So anyhow, long story short, that was my experience with with my visit with Archangel Michael, and that was the first angelic visitation that I experienced. And I don't think I'm forgetting anything major. If I do, I'll add it on to the next videos. The other two visitations, I'm going to do them, like I said, in separate videos as I can, as soon as I can. And Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it took me a long time to even share those visitation, Archangel Michael, October 6th, 2007, with anybody else, um, for a long time, and it took me a while for it to sort it out in my head as to what exactly had happened, to really come to grips with what what I had just experienced, and what it begun what it began to awaken within me, uh, rapidly. And And I'd like to say that, because that was October 6th, 2007. I'd like to say that all the things that I told them I was going to do, I did like immediately, and I became real studious, and I went right to work with, reading all these esoteric texts and sacred texts and studying and blah, blah, blah. But no, no, that was not the case. No, 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 no. Stubborn me, no. I had my own, path and my own things I was still working on and learning, and I still had to work out and break through a lot of the negative programming and negative patterning that I had acquired. So no, I did not become super diligent about it right away, but I have since, however, really taken to it, and I have done considerable research and studies. I have read most of the Bible. Now I've read a lot of the Bible now, but out of order. But now I've been reading it in order, and I'm burning. I'm going through it. It's awesome. I I feel like I'm connecting more and more and more with it as I do this, and not just the Bible. Oh, no, 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 no. I've studied quite a few uh, scriptures and esoteric texts, and even, that was part of the reason why I went to go study and live at the Buddhist monastery for almost 6 months last year, in part so that I would also begin to acquire a better and deeper understanding of Eastern thought and Eastern approaches to philosophies and ideological thinking, and conceptualizing the divine through the Eastern mind. So, as well as the Western mind. So anyhow, that brings us up to speed, I think, with this visitation, the first one with Michael, and uh, I hope it helps someone out there at least. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just doing what I'm being asked to, and sharing, and the next visitation is actually from Archangel Gabriel, and that one contains a lot more information that is much more. It's much more closely related to something along the lines of what Corey Good has expressed, for example. Just to give you a little bit of a taster of what I'm going to be talking about, because it's along the lines, it's similar, okay. And I don't, I don't want to categorize it. I just want to share what I was shown, um, and that'll be in the next video. Okay, so but that's definitely more messages, more towards like humanity, you guys, everybody else, uh, versus this first one, which was more focalized around, like, do you know who you are about me? So, but anyway, thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate you, and I hope you appreciate this as well, because it's been a long time coming for me to start sharing these things. So thank you again, and I'll continue doing this, and I'll see you guys next time. Much love from my heart, with a capital H, as always.